everybody, and welcome back to a new video. My name is Evelyn Barta, and those of you that are new to my channel, welcome to my channel. I'm so happy to have you here. Those of you that have been already here, welcome back. So today I am back with a new topic. I want to talk about timelines a little bit, and then this quantum field and quantum jumps and what happened with me on the 1st of January and how that translates to timelines. So we are at crossroads at the moment. There's a timeline split. There are so many possibilities at the moment on which humanity can go and continue its trajectory. So I think the topic is very relevant because we want to make the best out of these possibilities, and we want to enter on the right timeline, the best timeline as a collective, and then personally as well. Energetically, I have to say I have been all over the place these days. I spent a lot of time in my head. I have been feeling very weird compared to how I'm feeling normally. I'm feeling very ungrounded, let's just say. And when I tapped into it, what is the reason behind this, I found out that actually these planetary events are influencing me big time. And particularly Mercury entering Aquarius. It has entered Aquarius on the 2nd of January, which I didn't even talk about in my January energy update video. It's so funny. But basically, when this happens, Aquarius being a very logical sign, air sign, very reliant on the intellect, also very creative, very innovation oriented, but then it does have the tendency to spend a lot of time in its head. So this is what is happening with Mercury as well, because Mercury is ruling communication. So there will be a lot of operating from the mind and not a lot of operating from the heart, and that has been tough on me. So if you find yourself overthinking and over intellectualizing things, then know that that is the reason behind it. Okay, but we have to let this to run its natural course. I would always say that, even though like emotions are all over the place, let things come to the surface, and they will run out of energy at some point. So after these chaotic kind of emotional periods, there's always a breakthrough, and there's always clarity afterwards. So it is okay what is happening. It is absolutely okay. By the way, this video will have a second part as well, which I'm going to take to the other platforms on my other channels where I share uncensored content. So you will find the links to it down below. Going back to jumping timelines, quantum probabilities, I wanted to talk about something that happened with me on the 1st of January. So dreams are having a very big significance, at least for me these days. So I had a dream about someone from my childhood. My childhood love, it was more like a platonic love. You know, I was 11 or 12 years old or something like that. So that person was playing a very big part in my evolution, in my teen years as a child. And I think that was the first love, at least what I thought that it was love. It was the first real interest in the opposite sex for me. I was fantasizing a lot about that guy, of course, as little girls do, children do. And I could feel those buried emotions, like those emotions that I was feeling as growing up, that enthusiasm, that innocent interest in the opposite sex. So, you know, the first love is something that you will never forget. So this was after I went to sleep on New Year's Eve, and then I woke up in the morning, and then I was remembering that dream, and it was so vivid and it was so loving, it was so nice. But then I remember that I did have a diary actually from 1999 that I was writing for like 6 months, and I found it like a few months ago, and I wanted to read it at some point because I knew that that will bring up so many things again, and that is a real opportunity to heal the inner child and to gain an insight. But I kept postponing it for some reason. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna read it at some point. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna read it then. So I took the diary. This is the diary actually. And I started to read it on the 1st of January, and I finished it. So it was from 1999, November the 2nd, until 2000, I think May or something. And then I didn't write anything afterwards. May the 4th, that was the last day, and I was writing down basically every single day what happened for a few months. So it was an interesting, very interesting thing to read the diary, to see how I was feeling back then, what my thoughts were. I was having a very low self-esteem, but it actually helped me to remember loads of things that I even forgot about. So I recalled many memories. And I could feel again those amazing emotions, the excitement, the enthusiasm of those young years. And as any child, even though I had a very low self-esteem as a little girl, I was having a very busy life. I was doing so many things in one day. I was going to school, and then I was meeting my friends, and then another friend, and I met on the street another person, and then we visited together one place, and then we went to the other place, and then we met people on the street, and then I was meeting guys every single day. So loads of things happened in a few months time. So life was very, very different back then. There was a lot of socializing going on, a lot of transformation as well in my life as a teenager, which is kind of normal. Nowadays, things are a little bit different because of technology, so there's not a lot of socializing, but I feel like people are still, like this young generation, they are still prone to now socializing more than a few years ago. So I think we are getting there. But yeah, there was a lot of transformation in my life, and even though reading my words, I didn't feel like I was loved back then. I did not feel appreciated, and I was quite confused about my emotions and what was going on internally. I wasn't looking at the bright side of life. I was looking at the darker side of life. So I was going through a lot of tough transformation in my teen years. And I'm talking about the age of 13 going into 14 in this diary. But then looking back now and reading my words and seeing things from this perspective and seeing the perspective of other people and how they interacted with me, I can say that I was very, very loved, and I was appreciated, and I did have loads of opportunities, which I didn't see back then as something positive because I did have a low self-esteem. So yes, I was surrounded by a lot of love, by a lot of support, but I couldn't appreciate it back then. And there was a particular thing that happened on the 10th of February 2000, which I didn't even remember which day was, of course, and I didn't even know that that particular day was in the diary. But I did have a conflict with family on that particular evening. It was related to a guy that my mother found out something about a guy, and she didn't like it because I was too young and stuff like that. And I remember that I was very, very lost. I was feeling very confused on that night. And I almost like fell into this state of depression and, oh my God, what I'm gonna do, how I'm gonna handle this family conflict now. I was really, really worried about what's gonna happen. And I remember that I couldn't even sleep on that night. And I remember that I was lying in the bed on that night and I started to pray. I remember it so vividly. And I started to ask God to help me with this situation because I don't know what to do. I'm really lost. And yeah, it was a very, very distressing, very uncomfortable feeling. And as I was praying, all of a sudden there was like a presence there. It felt like a very loving presence. And I immediately shifted into the state of, actually, you know what? Everything is gonna be fine. And I think it was the first time in my life when I felt that I am being loved and everything is going to be okay. And I felt so comforted, and I was feeling this unconditional love and support. And I woke up in the morning and I was a different person. I was okay. Everything is gonna be fine. There was like a huge shift, a 180-degree shift on that night. And then, as I said, I didn't even know when this happened, and I didn't know that it was in the diary. So when I was reading the diary and my words, I was like, okay, so actually I wrote about that. I have documented that particular happening. And that night always was with me throughout the years. I never forgot about that. And in my own words, I was saying the next day that, you know what, actually things are sorted and everything is going to be fine. And I know that I should never ever lose hope, and I should always have faith no matter what happens. This is what I wrote. So it was very, very healing to read that diary. But then after I finished it on the 1st of January, because I finished the whole thing, I thought, you know what, I want to tap into that presence. What was that presence there? What was that entity that was helping me? Was it God? Was it the angels, my guides? You know, who was that? What was that there that was comforting me so much on that night, that shifted everything? So I was tapping into that, and then I was asking, was it angels? What was that? And I got the answer that no, none of these. It was actually something else. And I was like, okay, but what was that? Was like a particular loved one that passed away? Was someone else that passed away from the spirit world that I don't even know in this lifetime, but maybe I knew. And then the answer was that none of these either. The entity that was comforting me on that particular night was me from the future. And when I got that, I was like, wow, that was a real quantum healing experience. And I was sitting there and I was like so full of gratitude. And then I realized that what actually happened was that I was lying there at the age of 13 and I was praying for this comfort, for help. And I connected to my future self in 2022, the 1st of January, who was reading my diary. And then I comforted myself. So I just wanted to share that with you to understand how quantum healing works and how this quantum field is working as well. That the healing happens in a non-linear fashion. And because time is non-linear, you can connect to any of the versions of yourself that is existing simultaneously in other dimensions or on other timelines or in the past and the future, because past, present and future are all happening at the same time. So I was very, very blown away by this experience. I would have never thought, I would have never guessed that that entity that came forward and that loving presence was actually myself. So when you are hearing about the idea that your spirit guides are actually, and your teachers are actually the versions of yourself existing in another dimension or another timeline, that is not a BS, because past, present and future are all happening simultaneously and are all being collided. The idea of spirit guides, the idea of different entities as well, it is very easy to comprehend for the human mind, for the linear mind, because we always need entities that are external to us, because in this lifetime, in this incarnation and in this dimension, we are experiencing separation. So the only way for the human mind and for the soul to experience itself and to have the awareness of itself is to split, is through division and separation, because singularity cannot experience itself. It doesn't have the awareness of itself. So that's why we need duality. Singularity, when it splits in two, it creates duality. And when there is an observer that is observing the two polarities, then that is the third dimension. So that's why it's important not to spiritually bypass and not to be in denial when it comes to separation. Because so many times we can hear that, oh honey, you know, like separation is just an illusion, it doesn't exist. Yes, it doesn't exist on the fifth dimension, but we are in the third dimension and it does exist here. And then guess what? We came here to experience it. So yes, we do feel separation, we do feel duality and division, because that is why we are here, to learn from the experience. And we are also here to feel the pain that is being caused by this separation. We are here to feel. So let's leave the tools of the fifth dimension in the fifth dimension, and let's work with the tools of the third dimension in order to solve the, so to speak, problems of the third dimension here. And that doesn't mean that we cannot heal in a quantum way, because I tapped into the quantum field when I was 13 and I connected to my future self in 2022, the 1st of January. And this is what you're doing as well when you're connecting to other entities from other dimensions. And when I'm channeling these multidimensionals and, for example, the Pleiadians, it is very likely that I'm connecting to my Pleiadian self in a different dimension. I'm connecting through my DNA, my Pleiadian DNA, from those dimensions and from those planets. And that happens through the quantum field, because the DNA is multidimensional. So when I'm tapping into that knowledge, I'm tapping into the knowledge within me that is connected to the Pleiades, that is connected to my Pleiadian self in a different dimension, as I said. So I do have the database within me, I do have the knowledge. But the question is how much we can activate it. And the more we are expanding our consciousness, the more we are moving up on these different dimensional levels, and the more we are activating the knowledge within us, and the more we can tap into that knowledge through the quantum field. I don't know if that makes sense. But talking about timelines and jumping these timelines, I wanted to talk about the quantum field a little bit, because the quantum field itself is made up of pure potentials, limitless potentials, that are being expressed through waveforms. And our physical bodies, our physical vessels are also a product of this consciousness. So the higher the frequency of the consciousness is, the more expanded the consciousness is, and the more aligned the body is with your energetic level. And the body is energy as well. And the more aligned that energy is, the more aligned the waveforms are, the less chaotic they are, the more healing is happening, because the cells of the body are responding to the consciousness. So if you remember that chart that I was sharing from Dr. David Hawkins, at the level of love, which is 500, there is a complete healing happening there, because the level of consciousness is so elevated that is aligning the cells of the body as well. So physical problems are being resolved on that level. There is healing there. So the consciousness works as an antenna. And because the body is being connected to the consciousness, then the body is an antenna as well. And once I was channeling either the Galactic Federation or the Pleiadians, and they were saying that our bodies work as antennas and our hearts are the transformer. So going back to timelines, actually, we are shifting timelines constantly. In order to shift the timeline that we want, that is completely subject to humanity's level of consciousness at the moment, and ours as well personally. So there are limitless possibilities and limitless timelines as well, and then our choices are accommodating these possibilities constantly. So consciousness translates to waveforms, as I was saying. So past, present, and future are accommodating all these possibilities. And because we are shifting and jumping timelines all the time, that is why the Mandela effect memory is existing when we are carrying over one memory from one timeline to the other timeline. So the choices that we are making as a collective and then personally as well are forming a feedback loop. And then the actions that we make determine the reality, and then reality responds to the actions as well back. Therefore, this feedback loop responds to those actions. So I actually wanted to make a drawing to make it understand better, because these ideas, these theories are very, very complex. They are very abstract as well. So we have an infinite number of possibilities here. These are all these countless possibilities that we have, and they are obviously like based on our level of consciousness and based on our trajectory. So there are so many of them. They are infinite. Now, based on our choices, these infinite number of possibilities will start narrowing down. And then they will form probabilities. So they are narrowed down, and the more focused we are, and the more our actions are aligned with that particular trajectory, and the more conscious we are about that outcome that we want to achieve, the more these probabilities will narrow down. So if we are not making like radical changes and radical shifts, so let's say that we are very conscious about where we are going, so these probabilities will start narrowing down even further. So we will have now, let's say, 3 probabilities, most likely outcomes. So the more conscious we are, the more we will reinforce that particular timeline and that particular outcome. And these probabilities will narrow down further and further until they turn into actuality, which is the desired outcome, and that is the manifestation. So that is the creation of an outcome where energy turns into matter. So basically our conscious choice is forming a feedback loop between us and all the probable future versions of ourselves that we are aligning with, and that potential version of ourselves will provide with the resources for us that will help us to actualize that future self. And this is what happened with me when I connected to my future self at the age of 13. So you will get an outcome based on which version of your future self you are aligning with. And you are getting a different outcome each and every single moment because you are making different choices. So that feedback loop works all the time, and the reinforcement is changing all the time. It's almost like pressing a refresh button on a page and getting a different image all the time on the screen. So no matter how many times you are pressing that button, you will get different results all the time because your choices are determining the future. And each time you are tapping into a different version of your future self. if that makes sense. But think about it, the image depends on how much free will you are using. So even though you are pressing that refresh button and you are getting a different image all the time, if you are content on your trajectory and you are using your free will and you are taking conscious action and you are very, very conscious of this creation, the image might change. However, the images will be very, very similar to each other. So that's why it's important for us to take conscious action as a collective when it comes to creating a desired timeline, when it comes to getting to a desired timeline. And of course, both collectively and personally as well, there are different variables that are influencing that timeline. There are certain karmic connections, certain karmic fated events that need to happen. But then we also have free will. And the more we are using our free will, the more we can turn fate into destiny, so to speak. So when there's a karma healing happening, there's a lot of free will that is being used there. And there will be no longer karmic connections and karmic laws that will determine your timeline and your future. But your free will drive you to choose to take conscious action. And that conscious action will reflect the timeline that you want to experience. So what the central ruling class government elites are doing right now, they are trying to harness different timelines by taking away our free will. Actually, your free will cannot be taken away from you. So that is a paradox. You can be convinced that you don't have free will. They can make you believe that you don't have free will, so you are not using it because you don't even know that it exists. And this is what is happening with those people that say that you don't have free will on a soul level and you are trapped. If you believe that, then basically they did a great job on you because they convinced you that you never had it. But you can wake up to the realization anytime that yes, you do have free will on a soul level and you can make conscious choices anytime. So what they are doing right now is that they are trying to harness potential timelines by keeping you asleep to your own potential, so you don't see your own potential and your own free will. And by feeding us with the official narrative over and over again using media, they are reinforcing the horrors and the fears of the past. So they create a timeline that is reflecting the past as well. So basically, we are being caught in this cycle of never-ending horror. Basically, this is what they want to do. And they even have the technology that is helping them to harness these timelines. But the good news is that humanity is waking up. That is the outcome. And I made videos in the past about that. Okay, so I was like, I want to tap into this. And I want to see like how many probabilities we have right now as a collective. How many probable timelines we have. So the download that I received was that there are many, many probabilities at the moment. So we can get into a timeline anytime, but there are many of them. But then I was like, okay, Spirit, please narrow it down as best as you can so we can understand it. Approximately how many probabilities are out there at the moment, the most probable outcomes. And the answer was that based on the current trajectory, narrowing down the probabilities, there are at least 9 probabilities which humanity might experience. So I was trying to find out as much as I can what are those probabilities out of these 9 ones, and I got a few of them here. So one of the probabilities is that Earth is destroyed and or there's no possibility for living here. There's no life on Earth. Food cannot be grown, etc. So that is one of the probabilities. The other one was that there is a freedom-based living, a love-based society as well, where everyone is free. And of course, we have a very close connection to nature. So from what I understood, that is the probability of using no technology, simply living in an off-grid society, in local communities, etc. And keep in mind that this is based on the current trajectory. So these are the likely probabilities. And then the third probability was negative orientation. A totalitarian society, total AI takeover, complete takeover, loss of connection with the soul and with the human essence. So that is a probability as well. However, I got another one, which was a spiritual path, living in harmony with nature, but then also using technology for the enhancement of our living, sort of like a green technology. And then there was another one, which was technology used for positive purposes to enhance the human condition and not to replace the human condition. So these last two were very, very similar to each other. And my feeling was that this is the most probable outcome based on the current trajectory. And that makes complete sense, because this would represent kind of like a harmony, a middle way, like finding the balance between using technology for positive purposes, but at the same time not losing our connection to spirit. And this is what highly evolved societies, extraterrestrial societies on other planets are doing as well. Technology is part of their living. It is enhancing their experience, but it is not replacing the connection with spirit, the connection with source. And I feel like humanity will find the middle ground, and we are heading into this direction. But of course, these probabilities are very, very complex, are very abstract, as I said, because each of them has also other probabilities. They are kind of connected to each other. So there might be a certain trajectory, and then we will change direction afterwards. We might go to an extreme and then to another extreme in order to find the middle ground, and then to find harmony and balance. But at the moment, of course, we know that the plan is AI to hinder our expansion and our evolution when it comes to our connection to the spirit world and the connection with ourselves. Because at the end of the day, what we are connecting to, as I said, is ourselves in a higher dimension, a version of ourselves. So this was today's video. This is what I wanted to share with you, and I will take this video to the other platform because I want to share with you some information in regards to the liquid. So if you want to watch that video, you will find the links in the description box below to it. So take care of yourselves, guys. I'm wishing everyone Happy New Year. I forgot to say thank you so much for being here. You can feel free to subscribe to this channel and then to the other channels as well. So take care, and I will see you next time. Kisses to you all.